Analyzing Missing Migrants Part 4, Multiple Views. We're showing the missing migrants dataset with this map and also with this date histogram. These are two different views into the same dataset. Wouldn't it be cool if we could somehow combine this map and this date histogram into a single page? But why would you want to do this? What benefit would this give you? The benefits of putting multiple views on the same page really come when you start adding interaction. Here's a piece that I made back in 2015 of a similar dataset that has brushing. Brushing in this bottom view filters the data by that time range, and then the map shows that filtered data. Also, zooming in the map filters the data used as input for the date histogram. The big picture idea is to reconstruct this visualization and these interactions using modern techniques with React and D3. The first step of that is putting these two visualizations onto the same page. So let's get started doing that. We're going to combine this map with the date histogram, so we could start by forking either one. I'm just arbitrarily going to pick this map as a starting point. The challenge at this point in time is to bring in all of that logic from the date histogram into this program. Let's just review what we've got for that date histogram logic. We're loading the data, that's common to both of these. We're defining x and y value and a bunch of logic for x and y axes. That is specific to the date histogram. It's not useful for the world map. We could try to just copy paste all this stuff and cram it into index.js, but this is where the power of components comes into play. Well, let's review how this map code is structured. This is the one that we just forked. We load in the data, and then we specify the size scale, which is specific to the map. It's not useful for the date histogram. Here's how I'd like to approach this problem. In this file right here, index.js, this should be sort of the thing that orchestrates the high-level concepts of the whole program. And the code here, I think, should look like this. All right, you've got the map component, put that there, and then you've got the date histogram component, put that on the bottom. What I'm going to do next is refactor this a little bit so that all of the map-related logic is isolated into a single component in one place. And then index.js just invokes that component, and then that will be a nice foundation where we can just slot in the date histogram component once that's ready. The way this translates to code is instead of a marks component, this should be a map component. Or maybe to be more precise, this can be called bubble map, because that's really what this is. A map with circles on it is typically called a bubble map. And for now, I can start to define this component right here. Const bubble map equals just a function for now. And this is where I'd like to put all of this logic that is specific to the map. Setting up the size value accessor, the max radius, the size scale, and also these marks should go inside of bubble map. This is what the bubble map component should return. All right, now we're back to working order. That's great. The next thing that I can do is take this logic, cut it out of here, and put it into a new file that I can call bubblemap.js. In bubblemap.js, I'll paste that content and then export bubblemap as a component. In index.js, we can import bubblemap from /bubblemap. And now we've got some imports here that we're not actually using, like marks. So I'll cut that out of here and paste it into bubblemap.js where we actually need it. See, we're using marks right here, which we import from /marks. We need a couple other things like scale square root and max. So over in index.js, I'll cut those imports from D3 and paste them over here in bubblemap.js. Last but not least, when we use JSX, we need to import React from React, so I'll paste that import as well. Now there are a couple more things that we don't have, namely data and world atlas, and these both can be passed in as props. World atlas and data. But you know, now that I think of it, the world atlas, that's pretty much specific to the map. So maybe index.js doesn't even need to know about that. So how about let's not pass in world atlas as a prop, but we do need to pass in data as a prop, because data will be common between the map and the data histogram. So over in index.js, let's pass in data as a prop to our bubble map, data equals data. And this line of code here, oh, wait a minute, we need that here to display the loading indicator. Right, okay, now it makes sense that this should be at the top level app component. If we move this inside of bubble map, then we won't know if we need to display loading here at the top level. So I'll just keep it there, and instead of moving it, I'll pass it in as a prop to our bubble map component. And then in bubblemap.js, we can unpack that from our props. All right, back in working order yet again. Now, if we take a look at our index.js, it's much simpler and smaller, and now there's a slot where we should just be able to put another component. I'll call it date histogram. All right, that's how you can refactor a visualization component out of your app to make room for more visualization components. Now let's go about building out this date histogram component. I know for a fact that we don't want to define this inside of our app. So we can import date histogram from /datehistogram. And then I'll make a new file called datehistogram.js. And in this file is where we can put all of the logic from that other example with the date histogram. Here's that date histogram. The way I'm going to approach this is I'm going to move over the things we need to get to the point of rendering the rectangles. And then after that, we can add the axes back in and the labels. So what do we need actually for rendering these rectangles? Well, I think we need width, height, and margin. So I'll copy those and paste them into datehistogram.js. We are going to need data, and we can pass that in as a prop. So I can start building out this component. Const datehistogram equals a function that takes as input data as a prop. And before I forget, which I probably will, in index.js, I'm going to pass in data as a prop to our date histogram. Data equals data. Now back in datehistogram.js, we can continue moving things over from this other example. So what have we got? X value and Y value, and inner width and inner height, X axis, X scale, binned data, and Y scale. All of this stuff we're going to need to create our date histogram component. So I will paste all of that stuff into the body of this component. Now, what should this component return? Let's see, over in the date histogram example, it's creating an SVG element, which we already have. See, over in our index.js, our app is already returning the SVG element. So the bubble map should be inside of that SVG, or maybe it should be inside a group element. But our date histogram, since it's already inside of an SVG, can return a group element, namely this group element here, with the bottom axis and the labels and everything and the marks. So I'm going to just copy that whole group element And in datahistogram.js, I'll paste that as the return value. And for now, I just want to focus on the marks. So I'm going to get rid of the logic for the axes. I'll come back to it later. So I'll just delete all that axis logic. I think we have everything we need so that the data histogram should show up. Now it's just a matter of debugging and working through whatever errors come up. Data histogram is not exported by datahistogram.js. Huh, that's kind of surprising. In this file, we just declare the const, but we need to export it so that we can import it in index.js. Time format is not defined. I just forgot to move over that import. In the original data histogram, we are importing a bunch of stuff from D3. So I think I'll just copy all of these imports and paste them here in data histogram. And I'm pretty sure we need all of these imports except CSV. Okay, now marks is not defined. This is where things get a little tricky because we already have a marks.js. The first order of business is to get things working. So I think I'll just paste the marks component into this datahistogram.js file. And then after things are working, we can refactor things even more to use directories to organize our code. In the original data histogram example, here's our marks.js. I'll just copy all of this and paste it in this datahistogram.js file. All right, the map came back at least. Let's see if there are any errors. Okay, the width attribute is not a number. This indicates to me that there might be something wrong with our parsing logic. Over in useData, we're not parsing the date. So I'll go back to the original data histogram, useData, and then I'll just take this logic for parsing the date, copy it, and go back to our new example and paste that in here. All right, we got our marks to show up. Look at that. Sweet, the bulk of the work is done. Now it's a matter of finessing things and making sure everything is sized correctly and adding the axes back in. That's all for Analyzing Missing Migrants Part 4, Multiple Views.